just at our pace. Made some mistakes, but learned a few things. So I'll be okay. I'll be okay. I'll be okay.
What's up, y'all, and welcome back to another episode of the Tell It Like It Is podcast. I'm your host, Larissa Pena, and I got my favorite person back in the studio, my husband,
sir.
Louis.
We're back, baby. I know you guys missed me. I know you guys did.
You just couldn't stay away.
I know.
We needed you around here. I love having you on the podcast. So much more fun to get to talk to you. And this is a conversation that honestly I wanted to do last season. This is something that I feel like has come up in so many conversations and something that I feel like is just very prevalent in the world that we live in. I feel like it's very normalized, where we throw the word around, where we say, you know, the kind of people that don't know how to say no to things. Right. We reframe that as just being a people pleaser. Right. Well, I don't know how to tell people no. I don't want to disappoint people. I don't want to let people down. Or I want to be this reliable person that says yes to everything. And you don't realize that you're being a people pleaser. Yeah. And that's something that I feel like so many people unintentionally fall into that. And I know that everybody knows what a people pleaser is, but I still want to give you guys the definition, just so we can, for educational purposes. The definition of a people pleaser. The definition of a people pleaser is someone who has an emotional need to please others, often to an excessive degree that sacrifices their own well-being. What do you think about that?
I think, obviously, people pleasing is very normal. I mean, I see people do it all the time, but it can be very toxic too.
Mm-hmm. I feel like the both of us are very opposite when it comes to this, because I always say I'm a recovering people pleaser, where there was a point in my life where I genuinely believed that being a people pleaser was a good characteristic to have. I thought that it just made me more considerate of people, more understanding of people, trying to go out of my way, almost disguising it as selflessness. And I didn't realize that what I was really doing was living my life for the approval of other people, for the affirmation of other people, for the validation of other people. And it can be really, really dangerous. I feel like you helped me break out of being a people pleaser, because this definition is literally the opposite of who you are. You don't care about what people think. You don't care about the opinions of other people. You don't do things for the approval.
Try not to, but yeah.
But I feel like for the most part, it comes more naturally to you to just not care. Why do you feel like that is? You feel like it's just naturally in who you are? You feel like it's something that you grew up learning, like modeled through your parents, or just something where you're like, this is just how God made me?
I people please definitely before. I think everybody has. I have. I think I just realized that sometimes when I did do it, I didn't feel like I wasn't really. I was like, oh, this actually leaves me empty. Right. You know, so it's kind of like you do something enough, and you're like, oh, actually, this isn't true to who I am, and then also like. People please either for affirmation from somebody, or they would just want to feel better because, they're not saying the person no. But I think I've learned, I guess, when I gave my life to God, and also to a little bit of parents, but I kind of felt like God was always happy with me. Mm-hmm. I never felt like, so I was like, if God is happy with what I'm doing and happy with me, then some of the stuff I do for people, am I doing it for them? I'm doing it for myself. So I think I found myself more connected to God with it, because I'm like, I know God is proud of me. Right. I know God's happy with me. And it's not like, it's different because God doesn't come down and like pat you on the back. Right. And I think people want the physical affirmation of people. So I just was like, it's only brought me to success. So it's like, okay, let me just keep doing what I'm doing. And every time I don't need to people please. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it'll happen, but it's not like a daily trait in my life that I have to like do for people to like me, because not everybody's gonna like me. So
I feel like everybody naturally has a little bit of people pleaser in them. Like, you're lying if you're saying you genuinely never ever care. There should be a part of us that does care.
Yeah, naturally
to an
default,
extent, right? You don't want to live this reckless life where you don't care about your character. Correct. You don't care about your actions. You don't care about being harmful to other people. But I think that what I've noticed is I feel like in the church world and in the Christian community, it's very easy for believers to unintentionally fall into people pleasing, because sometimes we can almost mistake pleasing people with pleasing God, where we tell ourselves, okay, well, if I'm saying yes to this leader, if I'm saying yes to this ministry opportunity, then I'm saying yes to honoring God. And we end up making the mistake that we end up doing things more so for the approval and the affirmation of our church leaders and our mentors and our pastors, rather than just the approval and validation of God, of serving his kingdom, of, showing up. And I actually saw this video on my TikTok, and it was Tim Ross. It was on his podcast where he was talking about servanthood, and he was actually talking about, just the phrase how the church often says, "Give God your yes," say yes to God, and it's often associated with serving. Every once in a while, a pastor comes on stage, and when they need some youth leaders, they're like, we need more people to, the harvest is plenty, the workers are few. Give God your yes. Come be a part of our student leadership, our kids ministry, whatever. And, a lot of people, they hear those words and they're thinking, okay, like I need to give God, I need to say yes to this. I need to run and do this and immediately jump into this, because it's coming through the vessel of this pastor, when in reality, is God really telling you to do this? Or is it just, you're doing it just because you want to make your pastor happy? And I want to actually play this video and show you guys. It's a funny video too. Because this video is freaking hilarious. Okay.
You having a desire.
Let me play it from the beginning. Okay. Here we go. You can listen to it from my end. Ready?
Yeah.
You having a desire to serve, that's a beautiful thing. I have a desire to serve. I don't want to be exploited. I don't want you to take my desire to serve and turn me into a modern day slave of your church.
Yeah.
And then throw Jesus glitter jargon all over it. Come every weekend with your fresh yes. You about to get this fresh no. About to get a really fresh,
I love that.
sizzling no.
Sizzling no. That's hilarious.
Are you going to do my admin stuff? Are you going to come back with the admin? No, I'm not going to be able to do that. Oh my God. Well, will you be helping us with the, no, I won't be able to do, oh my God, what's going on? I will continue to give God my yes. You're going to start getting my no's. I just got married. I'm going home. We're going to brunch. We get here before the church service begins, and we don't leave until the parking lot's empty, and we miss brunch. We're going to brunch. I'm going to Cheesecake Factory before they stop selling the Belgian waffle.
Yeah, I can't with him. That's how you know he loves cheesecake.
So grateful for real.
I love you, girl. I get really defensive and overprotective. That's my apostolic nature. I don't like to see people being taken advantage of. Again, your pastors, I know they're good people. They're just running antiquated plays.
Yeah.
And their turnover rate in their volunteer department, I know you're not the only one. You're just the latest one.
Yeah.
You having a desire to...
This is savage.
Yeah.
This is crazy.
It's real though. Obviously, yeah.
This is like, I feel like nobody talks about these things. It's like the unspoken things in church culture where, there are seasons where we need volunteers. We need people to show up. We need people to toe the line and, make these ministries function.
Yeah.
But oftentimes there's a lot of people that will serve their hearts out. They'll say yes to everything. They'll show up to every single service, event, outreach, but it's to the detriment of their marriage or their rest or their mental health.
Yeah.
It's like the fact that he's saying like, you're about to get this fresh, sizzling no from me.
Yeah.
You don't have to say yes to everything. I feel like is what he's saying, is you don't have to fall into that trap where just because your pastor is asking this of you doesn't mean that you have to immediately say, yeah, sure, let me drop everything and be here to do what you're asking of me.
Yeah.
It's healthy to say no every once in a while.
No, it's true. Yeah, I mean, I think the issue is like, it's really not the it's funny, but I don't even think it's the pastor's fault. I think it's people just don't speak up and say anything. So you can blame all you want about like, yeah, they make us do this, but then it's like, you don't say nothing. So I remember one time I was serving in a ministry where I was pastoring at, and the guy who plays drums, I was really close with, and he would have lunch and hang out together and stuff. So he's like, yeah, man, I can't do it. I can't be playing all the time. Like I'm exhausted. So then they disappear. They do like this thing. He would do this thing where he'd be like, yeah, I'm going to take a break for a week and like he made up this excuse. But he would tell the what is it called? A planning center people that he had like some type of thing going, but really he just didn't want to serve. So he never spoke up and said anything. And I'm like, so maybe the pastor doesn't know. Maybe the worship pastor doesn't know. If you just tell him, hey, I can't do this, he probably just be like, hey, take a rest. So I think a lot of it is just people, it comes out of people pleasing. They're afraid to like say something. So just like in anything you do, it's like say something, like speak up, tell the senior pastor, hey, I can't do this no more. Like I'm exhausted. So I think it all goes back to responsibility as a person. Like you need to speak up and say stuff.
Absolutely.
Like he's like, you get the fresh no. Like you're right. He's the one that's saying that. So a lot of people are like, that's so true, but they'll never say anything. They always just stay quiet. So
I think something that was really alarming to be honest with you. Sorry. I think something that is honestly really alarming to me, to be completely honest with you, I saw this video. I remember seeing the clip of it on TikTok and immediately being like, yo, this is so real, liking it, saving it. And later that week, I got on Instagram and I saw it was like a video clip or a picture from another pastor posting about this. And I just, at first glance, I just thought, oh my gosh, like he's reposting this like as a pastor, like, yo, this is real, like maybe resonating with it. And he, in fact, was not happy about it. And he made an entire, mind you, this is a senior pastor of a church, reposting this video and basically saying, we have lost the sanctity of servanthood.
Right.
And basically saying that this clip of Tim Ross and what he is saying is showing the lack of servanthood that this generation has. That, we're selfish and we put ourselves first. And this is why we don't have enough people showing up. And so many people are just, they're not sacrificing enough for the kingdom of God. And honestly, man, it broke my heart because you see those things and you don't want them to change your perspective of that pastor, but then you realize like, dang, this is really how you are. This is really your perspective. So when you text one of your leaders or one of your students or one of your people and you need something from them and they say no because they're prioritizing their marriage, they're prioritizing their children, they're prioritizing their family or whatever it is that they need to protect, you're judging them. And looking at them differently, or you're thinking, wow, these people, they don't know what it's like to really sacrifice for the kingdom anymore. Like you're looking down on them. And that's really heartbreaking, to see that.
That's true.
What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, okay. No, I mean, it's just, it is sad, but I thought about, I guess, what was it? I think the same pastor, the pastor, right, that put that post up. I actually remember seeing it and he was relating it to like, he's like, was Paul complaining when he shipwrecked, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. So I get what he's trying to say, but it's like people just believe their own truth and what they believe in and what they want to think is like valid to serve. And I get it. But I don't think he understands the concept of like what he was trying to say. Right. Which is true. Like a lot of people rather go serve, and it's true. Like the whole brunch thing is a joke, but it's like, I remember being in ministry and being like, dang, I have no time to spend with my wife on the weekend because we got to go do a food drive in the morning. So makes sense.
And the food drive isn't bad. The men's Bible study isn't bad. Yeah. The youth services and the prayer services, they're not bad. These are amazing environments that we should desire to be a part of, and we should make margin for those things because community is necessary. Being in the house of God is necessary, but it becomes really dangerous when we convince ourselves that we are honoring God and saying yes to God, when in reality, we're really just doing things to appease these leaders and these pastors. And I've seen this happen before where there's a lot of people that they show up to every single church function. And if they say no, they genuinely believe that they are disappointing and letting down their pastors.
That's very true.
And they're afraid to say no. And that is a culture that has been created. It all starts from the top. Yeah. That culture is created by our pastors. And I know that sometimes they don't know what they don't know. You know what I mean? Like some people like in the church and in the house, they just do it, they just operate and move how they move. Right. And their pastors don't realize oh dang, they think this way. Like they think if they say no, that it's going to hurt my feelings. Wait, no, I want you to have a sabbatical. I want you to have rest. Right. We all need a Sabbath. Some pastors don't know that this is how, their leaders or their volunteers feel. And that's why like what you were saying is really important, to be able to communicate. Hey, I can't do this. My kids have a soccer game.
Yeah.
Hey, my wife and I have not had a date night in a month. I really need to margin this Friday night. To do that, I'm sorry, I can't be, at the barbecue or the cookout or the men's Bible study, so on and so forth.
Yeah, I think too, like, we just went to Paris, so we went to Versailles, and Louis the 15th, Louis the 15th, if I'm not mistaken, was building his palace, and it's so funny because it goes back to, like, he was a king, but it goes back to, like, leadership and people. But people say, oh, you see a beautiful landscape of Marathon, its gardens, but you don't see that people died building this. So it's an extreme, but it's also too comes down to, like, when you have power, people just don't realize that they're willing to do anything to build their kingdom, to build their church. So they're like, build my church, like, serve here, and we get more people, and we're going to change the world, and we're going to have hundreds of people at the altar, and they don't realize they're actually in the cost of that. There's people, being saved and things happening, but then there's people obviously spiritually hurt or dying or don't want to be there anymore, or get bitter and leave because they just want to keep building their kingdom. So I do think a lot of churches do want to build and be like there's this guy who has a brand that's like over 200, like his whole thing is like, you got to break 200. That's his motto. And I'm like, when was 200 a number that you had to break to, like, have a successful church? Confusing, but I think that comes down to people who want to serve and leaders not realizing that at the bottom there's people who don't want to serve anymore, who are exhausted, and
no, that's real. And I think sometimes you're so focused on, because the both of us have been in positions where we have needed to launch or build something. You needed to launch or basically rebuild a youth ministry. I had to launch a young adults ministry. And when that is what has to be done, that is the job that has been entrusted to you, of course, the first thing that you're thinking about or worried about is filling up the room. Numbers. You're thinking about, how can I get kids or students or young adults in here to experience this? For the sake of, you want them to encounter God. You want them to have these experiences and come to know Christ or just be in community. But at the same time, there's also that little bit of ego inside of you where you're like, I don't want to have this entire setup and only have 10 kids in here. When we were launching Maverick at the time, I remember, having balloon arches and having snacks and all these things. You put all these things together. And I remember before preaching being like, you know what? I hope people show up. Like, I just don't want to, I was like, and you know what? If I'm the only one in there and I'm preaching to an empty room, that's okay. But I just remember thinking to myself, you know what? Like, at the end of the day, we put all this stuff together. We worked really hard. We put a lot of love and intention and prayer and time and energy into this. But at the end of the day, God is going to have his way. And the people that are in here are the people that are meant to be here. And the people that need to hear this, they're the people that need to hear this. And it is what it is. And I think we just have to as leaders, as shepherds, or whatever capacity you're serving in, it's important to strip yourself of that pride and that ego and stop being so concerned about, the numbers. I feel like everybody preaches that. It's not about the numbers. It's not about the numbers. And I understand to an extent there's always an aspect and an element that, it matters. But when that becomes the sole focus, people become bodies to you, and you don't care about their soul. You don't care about their spiritual growth, or whether they're suffering or struggling or needing discipleship or needing prayer or whatever it may be. That's why I feel like it's really important for us to just ask God for discernment if we are, entrusted in those positions. So I think what I wanted to ask is, how can we differentiate somebody who might be watching this and thinking to themselves, well, I love serving. I love serving the house of God. I love being in church. I love my pastors. So I say yes because I love being here. And there's so many people in churches and ministries that they are that way. When I was in college, I was saying yes to everything because I was having so much fun. And I was not thinking, oh yeah, I just want to honor and please my pastors. And I want people to think the best of me. I just was like, no, I love doing this. So how can people differentiate when they're doing something purely out of the desire to honor God, or doing it out of the desire to honor people or for the approval of man? How can they distinguish the two? Somebody who might be struggling to understand, okay, wait, like I like being here. So am I wrong for being here? Am I wrong for saying yes to my pastor? What do you think about that?
I think you're an idiot. No, I'm just kidding. No, I mean,
Not
it's kind
rude.
of hard to, there, I think like the deep part of it is like that person only knows what they're doing it for.
Right.
It's, I can tell somebody, oh, you're doing it for people. And they're like, no, I'm doing it for the Lord. That's up to them in their own heart to know what they're doing.
Right.
But obviously there is some things, there are some, being in church for so long, you start to understand there's some people who, the differentiate between people and God is that, I think people who do it for people will often, often people who end up just do it to please people is that they have a default that they're upset when they're not recognized for something. And if they're not recognized, they
There you
complain that they weren't seen. I've seen that before. People who are like very giving, like they'll end up complaining like, yeah, I'm not seen. They don't really, they don't give me credit. And
Right.
it's like they don't want credit, but they want credit.
Right.
And I get it because I can be like that too sometimes. Like I'm like, oh no, it's okay, I don't want it. But then when they announce my name, I feel good. So there's a part of that, and then also too like I think when it comes to, for me, I feel like when it comes to pleasing God, there's been, I guess it's like hard, but for the way I view it, it's the differentiate is that when you do something, you do not care about recognition at all. Like you can give somebody a $500,000 tomorrow, and if your name never comes up, will you be okay? If nobody ever noticed that, besides the person you gave the money, will you be okay with that? And if that bothers you, that you'll never be recognized for that, I think that's a heart check.
Yeah.
Because there's things like that where you do something, but there's also people, red flags in people that I see that I notice that they especially being in like church realms where you got like comes to like performing arts. I've seen people like where they're upset if they don't get the trophy, or they're upset if their name's not recognized, and it like bothers them. And I'm like, oh, you really don't do this for God. You actually do this for yourself. So and some people do it for both. They want God's recognition and they want people's recognition,
Right.
But I think in your own heart you have to choose. But there's certain red flags that people do like that when they just want recognition or they want people to announce their name. And if they're not recognized, they're bummed out. They're complaining to everybody. And then, they only do it for trophies.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
I feel like the motive behind it, the intention behind it is really what gives it away.
Yeah.
Like what you're saying. If this is something that you would willingly do despite being seen, despite being acknowledged, despite being recognized for it, and you're doing it just because, then I think your heart is in the right place. If at the end of the day, also too, there are things that you will do simply because you honor your leadership.
Correct.
And there's things that you will do because the person that God has positioned in that position of authority, or somebody that you're serving alongside, they've asked this of you, and you truly honor and value what they're doing, and you want to get behind their vision, and you see how God can use it, and you see the impact that it has, and you're choosing to say yes because of that. That shows that, that shows selflessness, and it shows that you genuinely, you care for, these are your brothers and sisters in Christ that you're doing the work with. And
100%.
I think that too, because I know we're saying, I don't want it to be confused. It's not bad for you to say yes to your leaders. It's not bad, for you to agree to do things. It really just comes down to what are you sacrificing to do this? Because there is an element of sacrifice where sometimes you're going to have to spend a couple more hours up at night prepping for a sermon when God calls you to preach at a conference, or when you're hosting an event and you're up until 2 a.m. building a set. There are going to come moments where more is going to be required of you. But when you're constantly, putting your family on the back burner, or your mental health on the back burner, or your physical health on the back burner for the sake of saying yes, I feel like that's where it can get a little bit dangerous. So what do you feel like, I feel like we were talking about this earlier, what is it that you feel like people pleasing is really, really rooted in? Because I feel like a lot of people have the best intentions when it comes to being a people pleaser. You just think, no, like I want to make people happy. I want to, be willing, and I want to have a can-do attitude. And I remember the church I interned at, they would say, blessed are the flexible, for they shall not be broken. And, saying phrases like that, where it's like, things might change, curveballs might come your way. And if you're willing to say yes and do those things, like God blesses that and he honors that. And sometimes people can take that and run with that. What do you feel like people pleasing is rooted in?
I mean, I can only say for me, somebody else might disagree. I think it comes down to perception of what people think about you. So, if I'm a people pleaser and I tell people yes, it's because I'm scared that how would they look at me if I say no? So how would they look at, if I have a problem with somebody, people pleasing is saying, I'm going to just tell them this because I want to, I don't want to have any conflict. Because if we do have conflict, they're going to view me as a bad friend, or they're going to view me confrontational. So I think it comes down to perception. Because I've noticed people when I'm like, I can tell, like, I can read people very fast. So I'll ask somebody like, oh yeah, you want to do this? And they're like, yeah, I'll do it. And I'm like, I know they don't want to do this, but they're just saying this. And then after, I've had times where like they've done it after, and I'm like, hey, and I have to get it out of them. Like, hey, and they're like, no, I just, I don't want you to think I was like this. And I was like, no, the perception of what I think about them.
Right.
So, and it goes back to the same thing with God, right? Like, why do we do good things? We do good things so like we can perceive that God looks at us better,
Right.
So I think that's what it comes down to, because it's like also it goes back to our spiritual. Why do we serve God?
Right.
What's that? Why do we read the Bible? Do we do it because we want God to love us more? I think some people do that. Some people will pray more because they think God's gonna love them more.
Right.
So it goes down to works, and you start to think that like, oh, like, obviously our job's to please God, but what does pleasing God mean?
Right.
So
right.
That's another rabbit trail you can go down, but
No, that's good though.
yeah.
I definitely feel like the place that it would come from when I would do things that I feel like were very people pleasery things is I think I would do it from a place where I liked the feeling that someone was proud of me for what I was doing.
There you go, yeah.
I think I liked the feeling
Affirmation,
that
yeah.
wow, somebody is happy with me. It's not even that you're like affirming me and complimenting me. It's just like, oh, they did it, they got it done, and like it's that feeling that you're making somebody proud and that you're making somebody happy. It like fuels you, when in reality it's just this temporary satisfaction that comes and goes very quickly, and you feel kind of empty because there was no depth to why you did what you did. It's like when you do things for the sake of other people. Like you said,
yeah, you want to feel accepted. That's what it is.
Right.
Just being that's the simple word.
Yes.
You just want to be accepted. That's what people pleasing does that too.
Validation, affirmation,
everyone wants to be accepted,
approval. Like these are things that we crave and desire as humans, and they're natural things for us to want. But when we live our lives seeking these things, it's almost like you're like this empty vessel that just lives for other people. Like you don't do things because you want to do things. You don't do things because God placed them on your heart.
It could happen in marriage too, where somebody just I've seen that before, where somebody just is not happy, but they're just like, yeah, I just do it because it's like
I like seeing them happy. All right, if they're happy, I'm happy, and it's like. But do you feel fulfilled? Do you feel like that love is reciprocated or that attention is reciprocated?
Right.
I feel like I like what you were saying in our relationship with God is that sometimes we do things like we read our Bibles and we go to church and we're in community because we think that God is going to be more pleased with us.
Yeah, that's how I was in high school. I thought like if I like went to every if I missed like a prayer service or something, I was like less spiritual. Or if I didn't do the devotion, if I broke my fast, I was like, oh, God's going to be upset with me.
Yes.
It was like this love streak with God. Like it breaks and you got to redeem it back. It's so toxic. People I know that are still 30, 40 years old still live like that today.
And I feel like it's so easy to feel like that because you just think to yourself, well, if God is pleased with me when I'm praying and when I'm reading my Bible and when I'm in his presence, and if God is pleased with me when I'm in community and when I'm, living a life, pursuing the call that he placed on my life, if I stop doing these things or if I don't do these things temporarily, then he must not be pleased with me.
Right.
That love or that grace and that kindness, it has a limitation and a stop. And we don't get to put that boundary or we don't get to place those limitations on God when I don't think that we're ever going to be able to comprehend the love that he has for us and the grace that he has for us, knowing that he is the only perfect person that exists. Like, we're fallible, we're imperfect, we're sinful. If he knows these things, how could he stop loving us for missing a day of reading our Bible or missing a day of taking a Sunday off or, spending a day where we don't pray,
Yeah.
or forgetting to pray before a meal,
Yeah.
like those things do not make you this evil, horrible Christian. Obviously, if you completely neglect God and, are blaspheming his name or,
Yeah. But
those
even
are
then,
different things. It's like,
even going to, but yeah, it makes
it doesn't mean he's going to stop loving you.
Right.
I don't know. There's a lot of, I feel like we could go into a lot of rabbit trails with that kind of thing. But I think that this is something that's, I think for people who are people pleasers and they're blind to the negative sides of things because they're so focused on, I don't know how to explain it. I've met people that I would say are maybe a little bit more type A personalities, perfectionists,
right.
where it's almost like they live their life holding their breath, waiting to make sure that every single move that they make, everything that they do is in line and is perfect. And sometimes I can be a little bit of a perfectionist because I have an idea in my head of what I think something's supposed to be like. But there are people that live their lives like that where they think, okay, I did this and I did this right. They're happy with me. Okay, awesome. Now I can move on to the next thing. And okay, I did this. I got the job done. And, my boss is happy with me. Cool. And they live their life like that. And, they treat their relationship with God similarly, and they're like, okay, I read my Bible, I went to church, I did all these things, and now everything is good and perfect, but they're blind to the fact that something about what they're doing is killing an aspect of their life.
Yeah.
And they're blind to what that is. And I feel like when it comes to people pleasing, one of the dangers is this susceptibility to burnout or exhaustion, because there's people that say yes to everything and they don't take a break and they go home drained and dead and exhausted and they feel like they're just pooped. They're exhausted from life and everything, and they're like, but I'm saying yes to everything, and but my leaders are pleased with me, God is pleased with me, everybody's pleased with me, and so on and so forth, but they're burnt out or they're miserable or they're they don't go on date nights with their spouses, or they don't go to their kids' soccer games. What are some things that you feel like are dangers of people pleasing?
I mean, we talked about some things, but I think what happens, I think the danger is that, and it's sad, but you're the only one that is suffering. So I can see sometimes discern people, and I'm like, wow, they're probably suffering in their mind and they would never tell anybody, and I'm like, because they obviously didn't tell their wife, or they didn't, like, I could just sometimes hang on people. I'm like, dang, they really live their life like this, like just agreeing to everything. I've sat down with people and they're like, yeah, man, yeah, I totally understand. So I'm like, why is everything yes with this person? I'm like, I need to know, like, somewhere in this conversation. But I think the sad part is that they'll just suffer in silence and nobody ever know. And they'll get to the end of their life, and the whole time they've been suffering, it's like their own nightmare they live in, and they're okay with it until they crack or something bad happens. But that's why you see bad situations happen when people live their life like that. So
I feel like too, it kind of makes you more almost like vulnerable to a lot of manipulation, because
that too, that's a whole other part.
There's people who like they're the ones that are the ones that, I'm not saying that the people who ask things of you are manipulators. No, but there's some people, they thrive off of the fact that you don't know how to say no. And they thrive off of the fact that you don't know how to set boundaries.
Yeah, because I've been in places like that where they're like, yeah, this guy's amazing. I'm like, yeah, he just doesn't want to tell you no. Like, I'm not that guy. Like, I'm going to tell you no, I'm not doing that, or like, I'm good. And, but that person usually has, like, goes back to pride. They want affirmation from people. They probably didn't grow up with the father, give them affirmation. They probably don't have some type of root issue that they had to growing up that, they end up like that.
Right.
Just saying yes to everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I feel like there's nothing in the Bible that specifically says people pleasing, but the Bible does talk about living for the approval of man. In Galatians 1:10, there's a Bible verse that says, I think it's Paul, that he's saying, am I now living for the approval of God or of man?
Yeah.
Because if I was living for the approval of man, I wouldn't be a servant of Christ.
Right.
And there's this reality in Scripture that you cannot simultaneously live your life trying to please God and trying to please man.
Yeah.
And so I feel like as believers, even though a lot of us unintentionally, we want to be appeasing and we want to keep the peace and make people happy, we have to choose not to be people pleasers and not to live our lives for other people, because how can you give God your all when you're so concerned about what people are saying and you're so concerned about the opinions of other people? There's actually a verse in John that I wanted to share with you guys. And it's kind of the verse itself is fulfilling a prophecy in the book of Isaiah, but the prophecy was talking about the fact that there would come a time where there would be people who would believe that Jesus is the Messiah and another group of people that wouldn't. Their eyes wouldn't be open to it. And I think it's chapter 12. It's John chapter 12, verse 37 to 43. And I'll skip through because it's a lot of passages. But it says in verse 41, Isaiah said these things because he saw his glory and spoke of him. Nevertheless, many, even of the authorities, believed in him. But for fear of the Pharisees, they did not confess it, so that they would not be put out of the synagogue. For they loved the glory that comes from man more than the glory that comes from God. And he's talking about people that were afraid of confessing the fact that they believed that Jesus is the Messiah, that they believed that Jesus is Lord. And this was during a time when the Pharisees and the Sadducees they were the biggest the judges and critics. And these people were afraid to admit that they believed this because they cared more about the approval of these people than they cared about the approval and pleasing God. And I feel like as Christians, this is something that so many people can really easily fall into, where we are more concerned about pleasing and honoring our pastors and our leaders and our mentors, or even then, like take like the church world out of it. Sometimes we live our lives trying to please our family members, trying to please our friends. We don't want to we don't want to say no to our friends.
Time friend for 15 years.
You don't want to disappoint your family members. You don't want to let your mom down or your dad down. So many people, like, their mom and their dads are like, they place them on these pedestals and they're like, I can't let my dad down. What if my dad will look at me differently? I'll be a disappointment to my family if I say no, or if I do something different than what they're asking of me. And that's such a shallow way of living, and you're missing out on so much because you are just doing things for other people rather than for yourself. It's not that I'm just saying just be selfish and only think about yourself. It's I feel like maybe there's a balance to it. That's where we need to ask the Lord for discernment. But I feel like we just need to ask ourselves, okay, are these things that I would still do if nobody saw them? If I wouldn't get any praise or recognition for, would I still be doing this? Like,
question is like, well, why are you doing it? And that'll answer your question.
Right. Yeah.
And who you are as a person.
That's huge. Okay, well, to close out, what are three, maybe you can give your top reasons. It doesn't even have to be three things. Say somebody's wanting to, they recognize the fact that they're a people pleaser. They know. There's a lot of people that are like, I know I'm such a people pleaser. I'm trying to stop. I'm trying to break the habit. I don't want to be like this. I'm trying to really, be better about it. What are some practical ways that can help people break free from people pleasing?
I think practicing just saying no. And how does that look? Right? I do like a TikTok.
It's like the number
reasons
one.
why. I'm just kidding. But I think like the practical is the next time you feel an urge, like you could be talking with somebody, right? And there's an urge of, they say, hey, can you do this for me? Right? And there's an urge of saying, I can't because I got stuff to do. And if you feel like that's an urge that kind of bothers you and you have to differentiate, like, I don't know if I can do that, but you're like, I'll do it. You need to maybe test yourself and say, no, I just can't do that.
Yeah.
And be okay. Like, I think I learned from somebody, it goes back to confrontation too. Like, people don't confront because they're people pleasers. So he said that the main thing that got taught, I'll talk about this in another podcast, but he says the reason why people don't confront is because they're afraid of how they're going to take it, right? How the person's going to perceive it. But your job isn't to care what they think of it. Your job's to articulate your words, and the rest will be up to them to decide how they view you. So, I think say no, and it's okay if they take that rejection. You're practicing, and then it's easier to say don't care what people think, but the next time you do something and you do say yes, ask yourself, why am I doing this? Always correct. But ask yourself why you're doing this. And I think that'll give you a true, am I really doing this for like God, or am I doing this so they'll like me more?
Right.
And that'll give you a good answer. And if they like you more, I think you need to step back and start saying no a little bit.
Right.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
I feel like something that genuinely helps.
What about you? I
me-
mean, yeah, for you, like, because you obviously say you're like a recovering people pleaser, but
flying here.
what would that
Sorry.
be for you?
I feel like something that helped me was when somebody asked something of me, whether it was like, obviously it's a lot easier when somebody is texting you or calling you.
It's true.
It's much more difficult when somebody is asking you face to face, hey, can you XYZ? Can you make
Right.
it to this? Can you do this? Can you do that? Rather than being like, I used to immediately be like, yeah, sure. Oh my gosh, of course. Yeah. Like
yeah.
just nodding my head and just, I was either really excited about it
Yeah.
or I was just like, oh my gosh, I didn't want to say no and hurt their feelings. So what I started doing was saying, hey, you know what? I can't give you an answer just yet. Let me get back to you and I will let you know.
Yeah.
But I can't give you a yes right now. That sounds
Yeah.
amazing. That sounds so exciting. Oh my gosh, I would love that. And honestly, I'm not gonna lie, an easy excuse when you're married is I gotta talk to my husband. You know, let me talk to my husband about it. That's very easy. And I think just in general, when you set boundaries, it's almost like rather than you saying no, your boundaries are saying no.
Right.
Like if you know that, hey, I have this designated date night on a Saturday evening with my husband and there's nothing that's going to get in the way of that, hey, I'm sorry, it's date night. Or on a Friday, if you know your kids have a practice or a rehearsal that they have to be at, hey, I'm sorry, I gotta be at my kids' rehearsal. Or even if you're here's the thing, even if you're single, because I feel like a lot of people, especially in the church, there are people that think that single people are more available just because of the fact that they don't have a spouse. So
Right.
they ask them to do all these different things because they think like, what do you have going on?
Right.
You know, you're not busy. You don't have a family to take care of or a spouse to cater to. And so they, you know, kind of throw everything on the single people. Even if you're single, hey, I'm sorry, I got a mental health day this weekend and I need to take a break. I have to decompress and get myself ready for next week. I can't be there, you know? So setting boundaries, I feel like, is the number one thing. And just what Lewis was saying, it's really not what you say, it's how you say it.
Sure.
When you say something with love and you say something with kindness, the person who you're saying this to should, hopefully they know you enough to know that your heart is in the right place, your intention is in the right place. If you want to be a jerk about it and be like, no, I'm not going to that, I don't like, and you want to be a savage, then you know, at that point, that's really just, it's that you're showing that you're flippant and that you don't care and that, you know, you have a bad attitude about it. That's completely different. But if you're doing it with love and kindness, you know, hopefully that speaks for itself.
Very true.
So, you know,
Stop being a people pleaser.
exactly. Any last final thoughts for people struggling with being a people pleaser?
If you people please, God will hate you. I'm just kidding,
He will strike you down.
No, I'm just kidding. Nothing else.
Yeah, that's good, guys. If that's something that you struggle with, I feel like it's something that we all struggle with.
Yeah.
You're not this weird freak of nature for wanting to make people happy. I think that's something that's in our human nature, but I think it's a good opportunity to reevaluate and ask ourselves, okay, why am I doing these
Yeah, why am I
things?
doing this, yeah.
Who am I doing this for? And ask God to search our hearts in these
Yeah.
things. God, reveal the motives in my heart, reveal my intentions in this, Lord, and help me to say no more often and help me to set boundaries and stand firm in my decisions. And I feel like that'll help us grow as humans. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. This is something really simple, but honestly so practical. And I feel like it's just something that I've been wanting to talk about for a really long time. And I feel like a lot of people can resonate with this. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure that you give it a thumbs up, comment, let us know your thoughts. Make sure that you subscribe so that you can get yes, a notification every single time that we post a video. For the second season, we're going to be posting every other week. So be on the lookout for our episodes. And if there's any videos or subjects or topics that you guys want us to cover and discuss, then just comment and
Drop
we'll
in the
see
comments.
if we can make it happen.